Thanks for staying up later, which is what we're doing with Michael McKean. You know him from Dream On, seen on Wednesdays on HBO, but that's not where we're going to start. And eventually, yeah, we'll get to Laverne and Shirley, but the thing that's on my mind here is Spinal Tap.
Really?
The staying power of Spinal Tap. You know, it's like that cockroach that makes its way across the kitchen, and no matter how many times you corner it and spray the Raid on it, somehow it's like a genetic mutation, and it just keeps on coming back for more.
I'm picking up a negative clank here, Bob. I mean, I think they're a pretty darn good band. No, that's true. It's the band that refuses to lay down and admit that it's been dead for at least a decade.
I don't need a woman. I won't take me no wife. I got their rock and roll, and that'll be my life. Don't need it. I just want to make some eardrums bleed. Heavy duty, rock and roll.
How much better did you get as a musician in the course of Spinal Tap's history?
Well, not too much, I hope. No, it's funny because in my regular life, I do a lot of songwriting and arranging at home, and I do it primarily with keyboards, just because that's a newer instrument to me, and I'm still learning it. And it's also, you know, what's on the keyboard is what you write on the little lines, whereas a guitar is still a matter of feel and chords for me. So I think most of my improvement was done in the vocal field, I'm happy to say. I didn't know whether I was going to be able to do it, to play 26 cities in a row after, you know, listen, that's the time to start doing that is when you're 19, you know, and drinking heavily. So here I am, 20 years sober, and I'm in my 40s, and so I was a little afraid that I was just going to rip everything out the first night and wind up singing very badly for the next 23 shows. But it turned out okay.
What percentage of the audience that comes to a Spinal Tap concert do you think is in on the joke, and what percentage thinks, hey, this is pretty good?
Two-part question. I would say 98% know that Spinal Tap didn't really get started 25 years ago. And I think that 98% of the audience is showing up with the intention to play a part that is congruent to the part we are playing. We're pretending to be Spinal Tap, they're pretending to be our fans. And it's a pretty good relationship, because no amount of disappointment will fail to amuse. The other 2%, I think they got the wrong tickets, you know, from Ticketron or something, and, you know, they thought they were going to see the Leonard Skinner revival.
Do you still get a sense, though, even though it's not 100% real, do you still get a sense of the power that a rock band holds over an audience? Do you still get a rush being up there?
Yeah, but it's got to be a little different for us. You know, when we see an audience take out the lighters and light them and hold them, and they're being sarcastic. You know, if you're Elton John and they're doing it, it must feel a lot more powerful. Feel like Elton John night. But no, it's more the sense of fun. I mean, a really good gig when everyone's kind of into it. We had some great shows in Chicago and San Francisco and Nashville, of all places, and New York and here in L.A. that were, boy, I would have liked to have been in the audience as well. I mean, we were playing well. We had great guests. We sang our little hearts out and got some laughs.
People say enough is enough. And people say
I've asked some of the biggest names, most prestigious names in music this question.
In the nude.
And I put it to you.
Yeah.
If they asked you to put 3 or 4 Spinal Tap songs in a time capsule, what would they be?
Well, I think they'd probably be Give Me Some Money, and its B-side. I can do that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So it's space in the time capsule.
Yeah, it's a single. And its B-side, Cups and Cakes. And I think Bitch School, because just from the title right down to the last final gasp on the record. That was kind of what Spinal Tap was all about. That level of sensitivity.
Yeah.
I think it's Harry's phrase. Harry came up with the phrase, and we all kind of wrote the song. Chris's main lick, and so it was really a communal kind of song. That was the best kind.
I think Big Booty is a cult favorite, isn't it? Big Bottom.
Yeah, it was called Big Booty briefly during the disco era.
Yeah, I guess.
No,
I'm just thinking of the lyric. I'm not looking at the label.
No, there was a remix. There was
I happen to know the entire lyric.
You probably know this. There was a 12-inch remix of Big Bottom called Big Booty. During the disco era, we put out an album called Tap Dancing, and that was our 12-inch. Didn't sell.
Didn't sell.
No, but we did use the phrase Big Booty, and that's where you made the mistake.
So I'm off the hook.
Way off
really.
the hook.
But you know, But you know, I'm embarrassed by this because I fancy myself kind of a chronicler of Spinal Tap's history, and now, I've made an egregious
I don't
error.
think so. I just think you Americanized it. It can happen to anyone.
I met her on Monday, 'twas my lucky Monday. You know what I mean. I love her each weekday, each velvet, each cheek day. You know what I mean. My little gun's loaded and she's in my sights. Big game is waiting there inside her tights, yeah. Big bottom.
You know what is shocking, though?
What?
How much some of these songs sound exactly like stuff that people pay good money for, and it ain't no joke.
Well, yeah, but that's kind of part of the joke. There are some pretty good songwriters out there, even some who only use 3 chords. There was a single out last year, or in '91, I guess, called Thunderstruck. The AC/DC song was a #1 record. I'd say there's like maybe 3 chords tops in there, and no surprises. But it's just you roll the windows up and you turn the speakers all the way up and you stamp on the floor when you hear the thing. That's a great rock and roll song. So, God, if we had gotten that good, even with no jokes, I mean, we could have sold some records. But see, that's the thing. I mean, there is that we never went overboard with the joke in a couple of spots.
It seems to me that something is at the center of a lot of stuff you do, and especially Spinal Tap, is that you started out as a broadcaster. Harry Shearer, too. You know, that radio kind
Harry,
of stuff.
definitely. Much more than me, really.
But you've done that sort of work, right?
Yeah, somewhat. I think actually the first time I ever worked on the radio was 1970 when I came out here.
But having that kind of point of view sort of gives you that perspective to look at these things the way they were presented in newsreels, the way they were presented by the straight press.
Yeah.
Which was a big thing. I mean, Bob Green made an interesting point when Roy Orbison died. After Roy Orbison died, he noted that the obituaries were very knowing and very appreciative. He said, had Roy Orbison died 15 years ago, the guy on the desk would have been someone who, like Ed Sullivan introducing the band, would say, here's something for all you youngsters. Yeah. And all of a sudden, Robbie Robertson
would be a paragraph. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Green is right. Yeah.
So we grew up watching this stuff observed and reported by people who didn't understand it, and we thought it was funny.
We thought it was funny, and when we found out what we needed to know by ourselves. I think a lot of the stuff that I've done over the years comes from being an obsessive fan. You know, an entertainment consumer, very much a TV baby. And I saved everything. I've only written 3 fan letters in my life, but I saved all the replies. But I was, I could have told you probably every film that Boris Karloff ever made when I was 15 years old or so. Now I can tell you about 3/4 of them. But I was always that kind of guy, and I watched credits. I noticed when names would come up. Freddie Francis, I would see as director of photography, being nominated for an Academy Award for Far From the Madding Crowd. I go, Freddie Francis? Could this be the same one who directed Dr. Terror's House of Horrors back here, starring Peter Cushing?
Right.
That's the kind of brain I have. Totally useless in the modern world, but
not in the entertainment world, though. That was the point I was getting to, however awkwardly, and you focused on it.
Yeah. Well, it is definitely the kind of mind that it's fun to run your own fingers through when you got nothing else to do.
We're back with Michael McKean. Tell me about Dream On HBO. They move it around, don't they, time-wise?
Yeah, they kind of shuffle it around. Part of the problem is that HBO is largely in the movie business as well, as far as presenting and producing original films. So if they got a hot property, if they're going to show the premiere of Ghost or whatever, yeah, they're going to bump something, and sometimes that juggles the schedule around. But I think 10:30 Wednesdays is pretty much when Dream On has been scheduled for. But the character has grown. The character has grown in a negative sense. It's a black hole of morality, this character. The more we discover about him, the worse it gets. And I love that. Yeah.
Australian publisher.
Yeah.
At least loosely based on Rupert Murdoch. It's not much of a leap to say.
No, I would say that the backstory I've built is that Gibby's father, Gibson Fisk the First, that he is the one who was Rupert Murdoch. And he passed away in an accident which was believed to be wallaby. Forget it. I had a great joke there. I had a great Australian joke, but I'll leave that to the writers. Yeah, wallaby related. In a wallaby related incident. Gibby he's been kind of cut loose with all the money. And so he's gone to New York because the women are better looking in New York, he thinks. And he's bought this publishing company, and that's going to be his flagship for the takeover of America.
But basically, he ain't putting out any material that's deathless art.
No, that's definitely true. There was one episode called For Peter's Sake, which recently won a couple of ACE Awards for Betty Thomas' directing job, and Marta and David, who are the writers of the show, creators of the show, their script. And when Marta was writing the show, she came to me and said, just how bad is this guy? How dark do you want to go? And I said, hey, the sewer's the limit here. I mean, whatever you want to do. Because he's a thoroughly homophobic man who hires an AIDS-inflicted writer to write the journal of his last days because death sells, basically, and that's it. And when they get a bigger name who gets AIDS, they go with him instead and they dump the other guy.
Right.
It's a really cruel, heartless character. And I love that, because I'm such a nice guy. And when you get to make a jump like that, it's gratifying.
So the great thing about cable, in addition to all the junk that's out there, certainly it multiplies the junk just by virtue of volume, but there's a place for stuff that's worthwhile, but that appeals to a sensibility that's too small for network television. And Buffalo Bill was really a cable show. It was a great show.
Yeah.
So was the Slap Maxwell story. The shows that I thought were better than almost anything else on network TV, and I applaud the producers and the networks for giving it a shot, but they didn't go. A show like that probably could go if it had started on cable. Well,
when we were first doing Laverne and Shirley, they kept telling us it's not as important. It's important to be funny, but it's not as important as being liked.
Mm-hmm.
And, our characters, who were very profane to begin with, Lenny and Squiggy, the characters that David and I created 10 years before Laverne and Shirley, were just very profane. We could only do them in nightclubs where, there were no kids. It was very much a, kind of a slimy act. We had to make them a little nicer for TV. Now, I love the fact that I don't have to tone Gibby down on Dream On. Like I say, it's, what do you got? I'll take care of it.
For a while, there was almost a frenzy around Laverne and Shirley, if that doesn't overstate it. You must have gotten some interesting feedback, right?
Yeah. Most of it pretty good. I mean, there was something about my character which attracted friendliness rather than evil. It wasn't one of those things that people knew it was a character that I had made up, but they seemed to be nicely disposed. There was a woman who came up to me in a toy store. I was there with my kid. This was years ago. And there had been an episode where Laverne was having trouble adjusting to the fact that her mother was dead. She had never visited the grave. It was that denial thing.
Hey, listen, I think I know how you feel, Laverne. Yeah, I do. Really, I do. Because, see, I hated myself most of all, too. I figured I had to be some real loser for my own mother to desert me. Ain't it sort of the thing with you, Laverne? Kinda? Don't you sort of feel that maybe your mother wouldn't have died if you'd been a better person?
Len, for a guy who keeps falling off the roof, you got some pretty good smarts.
Nah.
Yeah? So this woman woman came up to me in the toy store and said, you know, that show really helped me adjust to exactly what Laverne was having trouble with. So I was very flattered by that, because usually if somebody says, God, I love when you guys were ice skating on the Jell-O, that really made me laugh. That kind of fine, okay, good, we fall down funny. But if somebody says, something you did actually made me feel better, beyond a laugh will make you feel better, but actually beyond that, and I'm not going to take too much credit for it, because I think she was probably inches away from, you know, from making her own changes in her life anyway. But if even in a small way, this silly comedy show touched someone in a positive way, then that was very nice.
This was a tremendously successful series, that goes without saying. Was it enjoyable to do, or did you feel confined?
Well, remember that it was 7 years. That's longer than your junior high school and high school put together. So you can't just say, well, was junior high school and high school, was that a pleasant thing?
Yeah.
Some of it was wonderful. Some of it was like hell. It was great to be making steady money for 7 years after a long stretch of making no money. So that was very nice, and I got these teeth, and I got a nice little house in Connecticut and all that stuff. But it also entailed some very strong personalities who came and went, as far as writers, producers, people who were involved with the show. Watching egos get inflated and dashed, my own among them, I hope. I hope I'm just returning from a dash, because it's kind of nice up here. You know, I just think that there's something that happens when if you're in a show that goes to #1 the first week and stays either 1 or 2 for 4 years, you're fairly prominent. You don't have the same view of yourself, because suddenly you are recognized. I mean, I didn't get recognized like Penny did, for example, or like Robin Williams did after Mork and Mindy, and you know, to this day, there are some people, I can't imagine what it must be like to be Tom Cruise and walk down the street. Or Billy Crystal. I mean, you know, even though Billy is a guy who's probably built better to take this kind of thing than anybody else, it must be an enormous invasion. And I was lucky because I was, you know, hiding under a big wad of hair grease and, you know, and a kind of a blank stare.
Speaking of Billy Crystal, Sessions was his creation.
Right.
And it lasted like about a week and a half, it seems, but I saw a couple of them. I thought it was a good show and had the potential to be a really good show.
Well, they did 6, and that's all they were going to do, and they were going to see how they flew. And after the first week, the ratings were not terrific, so they didn't shoot anymore. I have sort of mixed feelings about that. I was originally, you know, upset that they weren't going to do any more, but I also felt that I don't know whether we really want to be locked in this guy's in the office with this guy and his shrink for 88 shows. I mean, there's maybe only so much we can plumb here. I think the real reason that the ratings didn't happen, and I think everyone kind of realizes this from Billy on down, is that when you mention the name Billy Crystal, people say, oh, Billy Crystal, a performance by Billy Crystal. This was Billy's writing. It's very much his baby, based on his therapy, based on, in part, on his family, his parents, his relationship with his kids and his wife. You know, but it was me up there. It was me doing the acting. So I have a feeling that there was a certain level of, oh, well, Billy's not in it? Oh. Billy's very popular, and he's very good. And, you know, I go to see things when they have his name on them, too. And I expect a Billy Crystal performance. But taken as a whole, listen, we shot 6 of them, we got 6 good half hours. Sometimes you shoot 2 seasons and you don't get 6 good half hours.
You're a 42-year-old guy or thereabouts and kind of having a midlife crisis and a lot of baggage. And we look in on these sessions with a psychiatrist, like you say, who's played by Elliot Gould.
Yes.
And the stuff was extremely well written, as you would expect.
Yeah, it was probably the best writing I've ever worked with. When I left Annie in her room there, she looked so sad. She looked so worried about herself. And I wanted to say something great, something supportive.
How do I look? Do you think I look ready?
I really have to lie down, honey. All she needed was a nice word, and I couldn't come through for her. I mean, here I am. I'm her father. I love her, and I can't say to her, have a great time. In my heart, I don't want her to have a great time. An okay time, maybe, but not great.
A lot of parents feel that way.
Yeah, but I didn't think I was going to be one of them. I'm like my parents.
Every step I made towards being independent, every time I looked forward to having some fun, they pretty much make sure to drain all the joy out of it. And now here I am doing the same thing.
A lot of it was frighteningly close to me. People asked me, said, you know, known you for a lot of years. That was you on the couch, right? You did a lot of this. I said, no, I did no writing at all.
Well,
Michael McKean, folks, in Dream On HBO Wednesday nights, and of course with Spinal Tap in the classical bin at your record store. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob.
Good to see you. See you later.